Hello, Saints and Patriots. Apostle Claver T. Kamal Imani of RagingElePhantsRadio.com, the rebellious voice of Texas liberty. Thank you for joining us once again for a Texas Nationalist Movement Legislative Action Workshop conversation. Today, our special guest is going to be Weston Martinez out of the Alamo City. Before we get started with Weston, who's actually going to do some astonishing things today. We should have paid for it. It should have been paid admission today to see Weston Martinez do a presentation while we'll find out what interstate or road he's driving on or being chauffeured on as he does his presentation. Hey, everybody in the conference room, remember at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. We're going to be looking at that all throughout the conversation with Weston. If you have any questions for Weston, don't be bashful. Put the questions there and communicate with your fellow conference attendees. Right next to the Q&A button is a chat room button for that window. And we'll be taking a look at that as well. If you have any comments and questions, you can also post them there. I'll be looking at it here in the studio, and the TNM team, production team over in Nederland in the mothership will be looking at it as well. Weston is a long line of conversations we've had since last Friday, and if you've missed any of them, none of them have been duds, none of them have been snoozers. Go to tnm.me, tnm.me/tnmlaw, tnm.me/tnmlaw for Legislative Action Workshop, and take a look at all of those conversations via video archive. And please feel free to get you some snippets out of those videos, share those videos. By all means, get the word out about what the TNM is doing and what needs to be done for the 2019 session and beyond. The watch videos button is right there, red button. You can't miss it. I would suggest if you missed any session, go back, watch them all. They're fantastic. Finally, download the Raging Elephants radio app. Trustworthy news, information, commentary from a liberty perspective on Texas political ecosystem. And with that, let's go and talk to Weston Martinez. Weston, where are you exactly now? Do we have a GPS lock in on you somewhere?
Right now, I am in the heart of liberalism for the state of Texas. I'm in Austin, Texas, but be glad to know that I'm exiting as quick as I can. And now that I'm south of the Capitol, I'm putting on my my Merry Christmas lights because I saw
you could be arrested. You could be arrested for wearing.
Austin PD was looking at me, but to make it worse, I've actually got some deer jerky right here that I was eating on today, and so between my deer jerky and my Christmas lights and my hunting knife.
Dude, you were right. You were on the edge.
And I had some bullets.
Living on the edge. You were pushing the envelope. Your liberty. You could have gone to prison. You could have been relying on a Trump pardon here pretty quick.
There was a drone following me, and I'm sure there was a liberal Austin City councilman dialing in from their cell phone. Right now, but look, let me rest assured, we are on the way to Buc-ee's as we speak. We will be terminating this broadcast at Buc-ee's. That is where we're going to finish this destination at Buc-ee's in New Braunfels, Texas. So, anybody wants to meet us there and be part of this.
Okay, so if you have intentions of stopping at Buc-ee's, then apparently you did not catch a socialist virus while you were in the People's Republic of Travis County. That is good news.
Absolutely, you got it.
Weston Martinez, a varied business background, a very deep resume. I really don't have the time to go through all of it, but I think Weston is known to many of us in the liberty movement, the grassroots of the GOP, for his political activism. He's never been one to shy away from a challenge, put his name on the ballot, get involved with challenging campaigns on a volunteerism basis. Never hesitant about expressing his opinions, especially from a liberty perspective. And from those of us that have known him, met him during the inception of the Tea Party, have always had a lot of great respect, admiration, and even perhaps some adoration for how he goes after everything down to his bone marrow. Weston is here today to talk about property rights, how it's going to be impacted as far as expansion of pipelines. This is an eminent domain issue, and the conversation could expand out, fan out to other governmental projects, especially when it comes to infrastructure, and how private corporations could potentially benefit at the largesse of government, crony capitalism, the calling card of the Texas plutocracy. Weston, where do you want to start off with this? What do you think we should be? Where do you think we should begin? Because the issue of property rights, all the way back to the Trans-Texas Corridor, has been something that Texans have really gotten fired up about in the past. And if there's information they should be getting fired up about right now, going into the 2019 session, we want to hear it from you. You would be the person to know.
Well, thanks very much for the introduction, and you guys have been doing great. Apostle, you've been doing a great job with Raging Elephants Radio, and I'm thankful for you and all your hard work and all the hard work of the TNM group, because somebody's going to have to save Texas, and I think it's going to be us. So as we look at what's happening with this particular topic, I would say that we need to stay vigilant from flagpole to flagpole. And what I mean when I say that is vigilant from our city and our school districts all the way up to the state capitol and all the way up to Washington, D.C., because there is no spot that a liberal is not going to think about trying to find a way to avert property rights and also try to stop business from happening. Because in Texas, we've got a business-friendly climate. And but we also know that private property rights, just as our founding fathers knew, if you didn't have the right to property, if you didn't have the right to possess land, then the ability for the crown or the ability for the government agency to have dominion over you is something that could add the former mayor of San Antonio, Julian Castro, starting as we realize that we live in a very, very, very contrasting political, in order to make sure that we have a prepared team. So what I've done is I've prepared actually a presentation that is going to talk about private property rights
Okay, so Weston's signal from coming out of the People's Republic of Travis County is a little sketchy. We'll just be patient.
Because ultimately those two things must coexist without tram people here to watch. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now.
Okay, that sounds great, Weston. Go ahead. He has a presentation saying some Patriots. He's going to do it. He's going to share the screen with all those that are in the conference room right now.
All right. Does that sound good?
While he's on the road out of Moscow on the Colorado. This is impressive.
There you go. Can you hear me okay now, Apostle?
Yeah, we got you. So the signal is sketchy, but that's just a matter of you guys keep moving and then you'll reconnect stronger.
I'll be back on 35 here in just a minute. So, okay. Did you hear the introduction that I gave just a moment ago?
Yep.
All right, great. So then let me go ahead and go to my presentation that I've prepared, and we're going to talk about private property rights and pipelines and how those two must coexist to have a strong Texas. All right, so that's just a little bit about me for those of y'all that don't know. Been involved in a bunch of different things, as Apostle said a minute ago.
Oh, you are one handsome individual, Weston. Lord have mercy. Did you ever do any professional modeling? That's all I want to know.
I have not, but if you start a modeling school for you.
I would sign you up as the first student. Boy, you are one handsome. Jeez.
Now we are conservative now, so let's don't go too far with it. I just did leave Austin. I did catch somebody kind of checking me out. So, but former Texas real estate commissioner, been involved in oil and gas and the telecom industry. I'm an arbitrator and a mediator, and do a lot of business development and media and political analyst. That is analyst, not animal. Those of y'all paying attention. So what you see here is a list of the pipelines that exist in Texas. So I'll let y'all kind of gravitate towards that for just a minute. All of those different colors are different pipelines. And if you notice that what we have happening here is we've got all of the, we've got refineries on the coastline, and we've got oil wells across Texas, and we've also got oil wells in other parts of the country. And regardless of where the refineries are in other parts of the country, there still only is a couple of ports where they can actually export. And in fact, ironically, today is the first day, today, as of 2 days ago, it's the first time in 75 years that the United States is a net exporter of oil, of petroleum products. And that has everything to do with Texas leading the way in exploration, and Texas leading the way in maintaining private property rights. Fun fact for you guys to know, in Texas, there is over 400,000 miles of pipeline. And that is not a typo, that's actually rounded down. And so when I thought about naming this, that brings me back to property rights and pipelines. Again, 400,000 miles of pipelines and over 23 million residents and landowners here in the state of Texas have private property rights as conservative individuals, because the tenets of our faith are certainly based upon life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which, as the founding fathers penned it, the pursuit of property. And then by looking at a pipeline map here, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. All right.
We're watching the Q&A window in the chat room, Weston.
Yep, no problem. So when we look at property rights, a lot of people, it's a simple but confusing issue. Different states do it different ways, no surprise there. In Texas, the landowner has rights, the mineral owner has rights, and the operator has rights. So I want to unpack that a little bit just to explain to those people out there what actually we're talking about. So in Texas, you know, Apostle could own a piece of land, and that land, if he wanted to take the oil and gas mineral interests and he wanted to sell those, or if he wanted to get a permit to drill on his land, he could do so. A lot of times people sell that or lease those mineral rights to an operator that is regulated by the Texas Railroad Commission, which has nothing to do with the railroads, which is one of the reasons why I want to change that name to the Oil and Gas Commission. That's another conversation. And that Apostle, as a landowner, can divest it or maintain it. Well, if he divests it, then the operator then has the right to drill on it. In Texas, you can actually split your land three ways. You can sell the surface to one person, you can sell the minerals to another person, and you can sell the water rights to a third person. Each one of those people independently have the autonomy to do what they need to do without being mutually exclusive. So it's a very business-friendly, harmonious, the way things should be done, way of dividing and maintaining the private property rights. So that's just a quick explanation on that, because again, a lot of times there's some confusion in it. But when we get into that situation, you know, we talk about the total mileage of Texas pipelines. See if this link here pops up. You can see that the San Angelo office is closed due to them having actual due to them having a lot of oil, a lot of snow out there today. So this is some of the listing, and so you have your permits, you have your different divisions, and this is where you actually can go in there and see what actually is happening in the state of Texas. But this last month, alone. And, the barrel took a big hit this last month. But at the end of November, there were 933 drilling permits that were requested, new drilling permits, as opposed to 1,187 last year. Again, to put that in perspective, the majority of all oil and gas permits in the Western Hemisphere are done within the borders of our state. Let me give a plug for the fact that we need to maintain our borders, and whether that's with folks that are armed on the border or with a wall, if people can't respect our borders, they will not respect our property rights or any other rights for that matter. So when you look at this, this is an example of the crude oil system. And I wanted to show the people that are watching here kind of an overview. So if you look, you've got a hub that's up here, the Cushing hub, which is located in Oklahoma. And there's a lot of oil and gas in Oklahoma. But you can see it makes its way down to Midland for another smaller refinery, if you will. And then from there, they will figure out if they want to go to Houston or if they want to go to Corpus Christi. And there's different refineries that have different supply chains and also have different products that they refine in those locations. So, and based on the port, they have different opportunities of what they can and can't do. So in this particular situation, most people don't understand the interconnectivity that takes place. And if you notice, we're talking about active pipeline miles just in this one group. You've got and you've got over 14 million barrels, and you've got over 25 million barrels a day of crude going through there, and you've got 120 truck injection stations. So you've got oil being pumped out of the ground that is then going by pipeline or truck to a facility, and it is then going to a bigger pipeline to another larger facility so that it can make its way to an end user or to an end port of birth or some sort of a destination. So when people look at the topography of Texas, we're producing so many barrels of oil right now, and we're so behind on pipelines that it has a big impact on what happens with the price of oil. And I would tell you that the more energy independent that we are, the more we address our pipeline issue, the more energy independent we are, the more free from persecution we will be by those people from across the pond who want to put their knife on our throat. So we need to make sure that we're energy independent, because it allows us to have freedom and maintain freedom, and at some point allows us to not even have to get oil from those locations, or at least maintain the business objectivity to where we can actually choose what we want to do. Ironically, the refineries here in Texas were developed so that they can actually refine sweet and sour crude. Other refineries around the world are only able to refine the sour crude. And so in that situation, they are a one-dimensional production line, whereas we are a two-dimensional production line, and gives us a much greater advantage long-term to have the front seat in the market and allow a business-friendly market to exist. So let me move on from there. Now, let me read this quote. People deserve to know what risks these dirty, dangerous fracked gas pipelines pose to our families and our communities. No person, no family, no community should be saddled with these dirty and dangerous projects carry. Gas pipelines can lead to fatal explosions. By the way, in case you haven't figured out, this is actually a quote from the Sierra Club. And gas pipelines can lead to fatal explosions, dirty air, polluted water, exacerbated climate change, and it's important for communities to be able to know where these threats are located. So the Sierra Club, again, is not interested in maintaining private property rights, is not interested in maintaining business owner rights, and is certainly not interested in maintaining a viable economy that gives us strength. I want to show you one little quick video that was recorded by the Sierra Club to show you just how radicalized the left is.
Yeah,
when
but
it comes to
it doesn't even make any sense, Weston. A pipeline
no,
is going to cause dirty air, polluted water, climate change. I don't understand. You're just all you're doing is just transporting a liquid from point A to point B.
you would think they'd be against water hoses.
Exactly.
Yeah, these people, so unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there, which is why I'm thankful that this organization and you have taken time to let people know the truth. Because again, we don't want to shove something down somebody's throat. We want to educate them and have them be critical thinkers so they can know the truth, because then they can hold everybody accountable. So you'll get a kick out of this. The link that I have that the Sierra Club has actually was recorded by Edward James Olmos, the guy from Stand and Deliver. So let's see if this runs.
I remember from Miami Vice, man.
Oh, that's right. He was on Miami Vice. He did play good there. Okay, it says the video is unavailable. I'll put a link on the presentation for you guys to share this with the people later. But I might have got it to work. And they just use some very riotous words, carcinogens. I mean, basically, if you think about all of the things that are involved in abortion, no joke, like carcinogen and things like that, they actually use a lot of those terminologies in describing the oil and gas process and the fracking process. So it's kind of unique that they would actually try to do that. I'll try it one more time here and we'll move on. Is the video showing up like we're trying to attempt it, Apostle?
No, I don't see it at all, man. All I see is the link, and you're trying to click on it.
But we'll kill that, and we'll let your subscribers can click on that link, and if y'all can add it to the notes section of this, that'd be great. But it'd be a good thing for you to look at. But here's another interesting thing that I got from a commodity reporter. Due to slow progress in the new pipeline construction, Permian oil production has run ahead of the pipeline capacity over the last quarters, and therefore the discounts for Midland WTI, which is West Texas Intermediate, it's a classification, to the Cushing WTI and Houston WTI are widening at a rapid pace. Based also on our extensive research in the area, we come to the conclusion that these logistical constraints, that means limited pipelines, these logistical constraints are set to remain acute in 2019, and this is actually, we forecast that these differentials will get worse in 2019 before they get better in 2020. And again, that's a commodity reporter that put that together. And so these guys are, giving a financial forecast of the factors of production as it relates to the oil and gas industry, and how the rate of actual well drilling, and how that relates to capacity, how that relates to flow, and how that allows us to actually get into pipelines and get to market. It does us no good if we can't get to market.
Is there a longer range forecast for that? Because it looks like it's only, a short-term forecast for perhaps commodities traders in the WTIC markets on that. Is there a longer range forecast that we could look at, Weston, perhaps could give us a better idea of infrastructure needs going into decades?
So right now, oil and gas production has increased by over 300%. And in that same clip, pipeline installation has increased by about, the capacity for pipelines has increased by about 30%. So unfortunately, the only way to really diagram it or forecast it right now is basically one that is, we're on the way to the emergency room and we haven't gotten there yet. So literally, instead of stopping the bleeding, we can't even get to the bleeding. And so that's why this graphic you guys see on the thing now, is a homeless guy, who doesn't realize, or a homeless guy who has to bring a word from the Three Amigos, just to lighten it up, Claver, a homeless guy that has a plethora of resources from behind him in the oil and gas arena in Texas resources. He can't get them to market. So this guy, what I wanted to portray here, and Ryan Thorson helped me put this together, so hats off to Ryan. I appreciate him very much. But the graphic I wanted to portray here is that, if you had a homeless guy sitting on the side of the road and he couldn't get to the wealth that was in the resources behind him, what would that look like? And I would say that is what we have today. In Texas, we have the biggest economic generator for the next 20 years of the entire Western Hemisphere is located in our backyard, and we can't even get it to market. But how do you get it to market while maintaining private property rights? You see, what the liberals don't want to address is that there's hundreds of laws that come in place when you're adding a new pipeline, hundreds of safety guards, hundreds of different sort of permitting processes that have to be maintained, and you really can't get around them. So as we move forward in the entire system, people don't realize how safe pipeline installation is. But if we don't get those pipelines installed, we're really just, in the long run, we're allowing people in Saudi Arabia to be dictating what happens to us and the price per barrel of oil, the price of a gallon of gasoline. And, Claver, there are people that are much older than us that remember the gas run of the 70s. And an interesting political fact, most people don't know why for decades we were not exporting our LNG overseas. And the reason is because President Carter, and when we had everything going on with Iran, one of the things that they did is Congress and he agreed to no longer export as part of their deal with Iran. And you can just look at that one case. These people cannot be allowed to have control over our market. They cannot be allowed to have control over our resources, whether it's directly or indirectly. And so we have to find ways to be successful and productive, and we have to find ways to get our resources out of the ground and get them to market. Because if not, we're going to be just like this guy right here in the screenshot. We're going to be the homeless guy that can't get to the wealth of resources that God has blessed us with.
That's what happens when you elect a peanut farmer as president.
Yes, absolutely. And the joke was if Jimmy Carter brought us Ronald Reagan, then President Obama was going to bring us Jesus Christ. So looking forward to better days in our country.
Not quite close, but better.
I agree. Yeah, I was just saying what it was said post. And so one of the things that we have to look at is eminent domain. Is it good or is it bad? You and I know that the way eminent domain was utilized, the Trans-Texas Corridor, was not a good way. We have to make sure that when we're putting a public corridor anywhere, the private property rights should be able to coexist and not be trampled on. And I think that's one of the things that's going to come up this legislative session. And so we need to be in that conversation, and we need to be watchful for that. But if you look at the next slide, Texas needs oil. The majority of our economy in Texas is promoted or provided by the oil economy. Apple had a big announcement yesterday with the announcement of this new plant expansion they're going to be building, and the new jobs they're going to be building. And I would tell you that without the oil and gas sector, the tech sector would not exist. They would still be using an abacus. You could not have a smartphone without petroleum products. And so for all you liberals out there, all you latte soy boys, you couldn't be watching YouTube on your smartphone if it wasn't for the oil and gas industry. So in Texas, we have found a way to do it right, but we have to find a way to do it better without trampling on our private property rights in any way, shape, or form. Now, how do we do that? Again, how do we extract oil and gas and protect the private property rights? Number one, we need to be vigilant. One of the ways we can do that is listening to organizations like Raging Elephants Radio and like the TNM organization, that is a good grassroots organization that is going to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. Can I get a witness, Claver?
Amen.
And so we have to make sure that we are staying plugged in, or that we're supporting those organizations that are plugged in, and make sure that they actually have the resources to put the boots on the ground, even if you're not able to go. So at the Texas House, we actually have the House Committee on Land and Resource Management. So if there's eminent domain bills, they're going to be added to that committee, and that's where they're going to be heard originally. You're probably not going to get a rider bill or a tag-along bill that's going to add that to it and not go through that organization, go through that subcommittee. So that is something that we need to keep an eye on and make sure that we know what is going on. And I have an incoming call, but I'm going to have to take it later. And I'm almost at Buc-ee's, guys, by the way. I'm in San Marcos now. The blue has gotten lighter and the red is getting darker, but I can tell you there's more work for us to be done. So share this video and the other videos that were in the series to your friends and family. And Claver, they make great stocking stuffers, am I right?
Digital stocking stuffers. That's the way it works.
Absolutely. And there's no carbon footprint.
And they're free. You don't need a gift card. You don't need a gift card.
Dude, every liberal in town should be lining up for this. Free stuff that actually provides you something.
Yeah, it's still not as good as an Obama phone, though.
Well, Carlos Slim is the one that provided Obama the solution, but that's another story. All right, so the House Committee on Land Management and Resource Management is something that we need to be vigilant about. Obviously, we know that we want people to talk to their legislators, and those are things that are important, but we have to make sure that we know what's going on in the situation. As we move through here, what I wanted to do is go back and kind of talk through what we talked about, because there was a lot of ground we covered, and so I wanted to use the remaining time that we had here, Claver, to just kind of unpack that a little bit deeper and talk about some of the things that kind of jumped off the map with you and some questions that you had, because I'm sure that, like most places, people are afraid to ask questions. So at this point, I was going to let you go through there and unpack some of that as we slide into Buc-ee's here in the next few minutes.
Yeah, I want to encourage all the participants to submit questions if you have some for Weston. Great presentation, Weston. I'll start before I get into my questions. Jerry from Houston via email in the chat room. Can you tell us specifically how the federal government negatively impacts us on energy? That's kind of a wide-ranging thing there, but see if you can make it succinct, Weston, without an entire doctoral dissertation.
So I will tell you, while Obama was in office, there was a great necessity to eliminate the EPA, eliminate the Department of Energy, and a couple of other overreaching organizations. I will tell you that President Trump has come in there and has put people in leadership in those places that don't have that are not excited about being part of a government agency. In fact, the former Attorney General of Oklahoma sued the EPA 15 or 20 times, and that is the person that he chose as cabinet member to head up the EPA. And there were many overreaching requirements that the EPA was legally allowed by executive order to put on people that went away, honestly, instantly. And likewise, in the Department of Energy, we have Governor Perry there now, and the Department of Energy, without the right leadership, instead of being a business partner, actually was a business stopper and had impact over a lot of different things. There's some federal organizations that, like FAMSA, that actually is the Federal Pipeline Organization. And you also have Texas Railroad Commission, and then you have different energy departments across the state. But all of those essentially work with the Department of Energy on how they're going to move forward in the energy environment. And so I would tell you that there's groups like FERC, NERC. There's all kinds of different organizations that are out there that have an impact on energy or on resources. And I kind of look at those things, Flavor, as little closets where liberals can hide. So, we want all liberals to come out of the closet, whatever closet they're in. And we need to, those are some of the places that we look at. And so making sure that we don't have federal overreach that bureaucratically comes to us is very important. But also the local municipalities, you've actually got city councils like the city of Denton that wanted to ban fracking and usurp state authority in those situations. And you had SMU, a very liberal school, unfortunately, that, you had different groups that put out different studies that don't tell the truth about fracking and how it actually takes place. So I would say it's much like the conservative movement, right? Claver's not afraid to talk to a liberal about their viewpoint. In fact, he welcomes it. Each one of you should do the same thing, because that's the only way we're going to provide truthful information into these people that are usually good-hearted people, but they've just swallowed a pill of lies and they don't know how to get it out. So we need to talk about these things at your Christmas parties. Instead of writing your name on your little name tag at your Christmas party, instead write something on there that says clean oil. I mean, they won't even know what to do with that.
That's dangerous, man. You may find out that you're getting Christmas cards addressed to clean oil.
Praise the Lord.
Weston, they're rioting over in France. Gasoline is approaching $7.50 per gallon. I don't know what it is right there on the I-35 corridor, but around here in H-Town, gas is now falling to close to $1.90 a gallon. First question on that, and eventually I want to get back to the property rights and eminent domain issue, but the regulatory environment of the United States, the president speaking incessantly about this anti-regulatory environment, anti-regulation environment that he's ushered in through his administration. Can some of that be attributed to the falling gas prices, that it's not as costly to get the Texas tea out of the ground, the falling cost on the barrel, on WTIC? Is it because of the regulatory environment?
So part of what took place is that hydraulic fracturing. So in the old days, people would drill a well, they'd drill down 700 feet, 1,200 feet, maybe, a couple thousand feet. They would drill a straight well, and they would just suck their oil out of the ground just like a straw. The technology for hydraulic fracturing and horizontal fracturing actually was created a long time ago, but instead of going a couple thousand feet, you actually have to drill down 15,000 feet approximately, and then you have to go horizontally about a mile. So the price per barrel, the big oil companies were not able to be profitable. And so once the oil got up to $70, $80, $150, $120 barrel, and then you had the price per barrel slide back again, partly because of OPEC, partly because OPEC was seeing us having more freedom. And so you have to remember that between OPEC and us, it's like cat and mouse. Sometimes we're the cat, sometimes we're the mouse. I'm all for us changing that relationship to where we are the lion and not the sheep, because I think that's really what it really has turned into. But so the oil and gas prices dropped tremendously, dropped very, very, very low, and they went from their highest point in years to the lowest point in years. We're gonna get over here in just a minute. And sorry, we're close to Buc-ee's, guys. Y'all get ready. And
You
And
got
what
you got
happened?
jerky on the mind, dude. I mean, it's really sad.
I got the jerky right here.
I
It's right
it's
here,
really
baby.
it's a tragic demonstration is what's going on. It's a tragic exhibition with this Bucky's and jerky kind of thing going on here, Weston.
Do you know what the You know what the old Indian definition was for the word vegetarian?
I'm afraid to ask.
Sorry, I was incorrect. Do you know what the Native American definition was for vegetarian?
No.
Bad hunter. So I'm just saying.
At least it was clean. I gotta say that.
That's right. Clean and fresh. I mean, it was totally organic back then. Why would anybody be against it? The greenest food you can have. Anyway, so what happened was their infrastructure got down there. They realized how big of a resource actually was down there, and they realized that they had a mile thick of oil and miles wide of a reserve. So if you can imagine the Brazos River, the Colorado River, the Guadalupe River, and the Red River all stacked together times 3, times 4, that's how big of a river of oil we have under Texas in the Eagle Ford Shale. Not to mention what we have over in West Texas. So once they got down there, they realized what an ample supply was there. And like good businessmen, they found a cheaper way to do it. And so where they had to be at $50 a barrel to be profitable in the past, these oil and gas companies found a way to be profitable at $15 and $25 a barrel. So now the scale of economy is greater, and people see the rush when they go to drill the wells. But I will tell you that there's more money going into the coffers at the state legislature in the rainy day fund today than there was even last year and the year before, and that's because that infrastructure is being built, and now you can actually get that oil to market, because if it's trapped in the ground, no bean counter is running a number on it to generate tax revenue to the local, state, municipality in order to be a provider, which is one of the reasons why, on a separate note, Flavor, that's why I think the solution to property tax in Texas is in the oil and gas business, because I've got a good friend that's the mayor of Von Army, Texas for a while, and as his sales tax revenue increased, they decreased their property tax revenue to 0. So I'm telling you, there is a way for us to live free and actually own our homes, and I believe the oil and gas industry is a key to that solution. So to further answer the question, they found a way to be more profitable, and the more profitable they become, yes, the more we see a savings at the gas pump, because now we're not getting yo-yoed to $3.80 a gallon like we were a couple of years ago, and that does not make terrorists happy. And I'm all for not making terrorists happy.
I talk with Weston Martinez. Okay, Weston, let's get back to the issue of eminent domain. In your presentation, you laid out the case that we have a capacity problem getting the product out of the ground, the Texas tea out of the ground, and getting it to port, and continuing to further our advantage in energy exports. That's going to take the increasing of capacity, the interaction between government and private property owners, or at least those that think they have private property. It doesn't exist until we get rid of property tax. Are the protections in place in Texas? Is the leadership or the bureaucrats in place in Texas to actually have reverence for property rights and will not abuse eminent domain? Are the people in place that can establish a credible, acceptable record on treating property owners in Texas fairly, in giving them compensation for their property to meet the market demand?
We don't have enough. We don't have enough, and it's too easy for a lobbyist in Austin, too easy for a lobbyist in Austin to get that legislator to sell out his constituents, and we don't have enough. And Apostle, I know you and I didn't have this problem, but my first time I was at swearing in for the legislature, I realized why good people go to Austin and they turn into people they said they're never going to be. And I realized that Austin and the Capitol is exactly the same as a high school. The only difference is that in the Capitol, everybody's popular. These legislators, a lot of them, they weren't popular in their high school. They've never had a pretty girl talk to them. So when the pretty girl that's the outside salesperson comes over there as a lobbyist to ask them to wink, wink, read my bill, then they wind up getting duped and not being held accountable. So we have to hold people accountable. That's why it's important that we have good people in office that have the right conservative values, that are going to stand up for the freedom and for the opportunity to have the right to have a successful Texas. I pulled back up the pipeline that we had a minute ago, and just to reiterate, this is crisscrossing all of Texas, and this is just one operator. If I go back to the total number of over 400,000 miles of pipelines, look at what we have here. The green is crude oil. Does that show up on your screen okay?
Not yet. Do a screen share.
All right. I thought I did screen share. Stand by. I thought I was screen sharing the whole time. Good Lord. What a rookie. All right, here we go. And screen share's on the way.
There you go.
I would like to report that the Eagle has landed. We are now in Buc-ee's. All things in the universe are right. Have you ever noticed, Flavor, the Bible says, be right with the Lord?
And there's no mention of Buc-ee's in there.
But there's no mention of being left with the Lord. Be right.
Oh, well, yeah, being right is all over the place in there.
Because the right is the right. All right, so does that come through okay?
Yeah, I got it. You can put it on full screen. There you go.
All right, here we go. It's right there. Okay. Stand by. It's on your side. All right, there we go.
Okay, reduce screen size.
I don't think that I can. I can't make it smaller.
No, we saw it perfectly the last time, so I don't know what happened. So,
okay.
Well, we saw it perfectly last time. Right. Go ahead with your oral illustration.
Well, shoot. Oh. There we go. How about now? Better?
There you go. Much better.
All right. So this is the pipeline environment that we have right now in Texas. The green pipelines are crude oil pipelines. The blue is hazardous liquid, and the red is natural gas pipelines. See, most people don't realize, the liberals don't realize we've got hazardous liquids that we also have to move through Texas so we can keep Texas safe. So if they really knew how safe we were making Texas, they really ought to help us instead of getting in the way. But to answer your question, if you look at this map, there's not a Senate seat or a state rep seat that is untouched, except for maybe the guy right there in Big Bend. But there is not anybody in Texas that is untouched, that pipelines and oil and gas and the private property rights issue is not an issue. They have a big pipeline that was going through West Texas, and it was going through the area near Big Bend, and they had a liberal group that got over there. You would have to flip all the way around. They got a liberal group that went over there, and they actually stopped the pipeline and slowed it down. And that's not something that we can allow to have happen in Texas or anywhere. So we have to make sure that we are making it, we're keeping it open for business, because that is the only way we keep the Texas economy growing, and that is the only way that we can get Texas open. So
okay, so are there any in the last few minutes that we have, Weston, are there any imminent domain battles that we need to be aware of that are going on right now, whether whether with commercial property or private property owners that we should be knowing about right now that may be flying under the radar, or maybe in local media could be making news and headlines? It seems like it's not necessarily a sexy issue, but when you go back to the Trans-Texas Corridor drama, when it gets right down to it, property rights and eminent domain is something that Texas citizens are very sensitive about and want to be made aware of. Are there any battles that are going on right now that we should be shining a spotlight on?
We should be shining a spotlight on every single encroachment issue that is happening, where you have municipalities that are trying to expand their ETJ. And so if you have a situation where you've got a municipality that's trying to expand their ETJ, that is the camel's nose under the tent for how they want to next remove the rest of the property rights that you have. And that is where we need to look at. So
okay, so the issue not necessarily is
right.
The issue is municipalities or government entities actually thwarting the rights of property owners to do with their property as they wish, including selling mineral rights or the right to have infrastructure built on their property, what can be done above the ground. The government, municipalities like Denton, overreaching, stepping outside of their boundaries, what the Constitution of Texas guarantees for property rights for property owners, right, Weston?
That's absolutely right.
He's at Buc-ee's, y'all.
Pardon my reason, I'm getting out of Buc-ee's for y'all. I was out here anyway.
He's at Buc-ee's with his Christmas lights around his neck, Saints and Patriots. But he actually is a very serious political activist. He may not look at it right. Wait a minute. Now, are you going to – is Buc-ee's going to give any type of endorsement compensation?
Buc-ee's stands for property rights, I guarantee you. The owners are Republican.
Yeah, but they need to pay for the free advertising. They're getting this free media today.
I'd probably have the lieutenant governor do that for me.
See, it takes
get him to nail.
The media
I do know that a few politicians.
The media guy has to remind the energy.
I do know that a few
runs off of advertising.
That's true. Oh, sorry, hang on. Get over here where it's still connected. You still got me all right?
Yeah.
Sorry, get over here to a spot real quick so we can wind this through. Here we go.
Weston Martinez at Buc-ee's, ladies and gentlemen, on I-35.
So you just never know what you're going to get. Tell you what.
Weston, your signal's getting kind of scratchy, man. Why don't you give us some final thoughts and we'll let you go. We're coming up on the top of the hour.
Getting right over here to a final destination. Almost there. Hold on. Texas-sized Buc-ee's right there for you, baby.
Let's wrap it up, Weston. Final thoughts as we go into the 2019 session. What should activists be looking for? What should they be connecting with their legislators? What kind of pressure should they be being applied to their legislators? Daniel, I think he's dead, man. You may want to unplug him. I don't know.
Every time.
Yeah, okay. Saints and Patriots, that's it with Weston. He's in Buc-ee's.
Every time somebody drives by Buc-ee's, remember Weston works for you. And remember.
I think Weston is probably getting some chocolate-covered bacon or something. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Saints and Patriots. The Texas Nationalist Movement's Legislative Action Workshop. We have another session scheduled for January the 3rd with Jonathan the Big Stick Stickland, and we're going to be talking about the Texas speaker's race. Relationships with legislators. We've yet to lock down a specific day and time with State Representative Steve Toth, who is returning back to the Pink Dome after running for Congress a couple election cycles ago. It's great to have Steve Toth, as you know, a Liberty warrior back under the Pink Dome, and probably will receive an invitation to be a part of the Freedom Caucus. If you want to sign up, reserve your seat in the conference room, the video conference room, for any of the upcoming events. And this won't be the last one. This is going to be a consistent practice by the Texas Nationalist Movement and the communications team. You want to check your email for links. Go to tnm.me/TNMLAW Law for Legislative Action Workshop. Sign up for any future conversations that you want to attend. Reserve your conference room seat. And as you probably already know, you will get a individually unique created URL specifically for that video conference room. This concludes a week of amazing conversations dealing with Texas first issues, with even some international panelists thrown in. The outstanding panel on the Alamo and its current situation. Certainly one of the superstars would have to be Rachel Malone with her 2-hour presentation on how to be more effective when you do visit the Pink Dome and you want these nimnongs up there to do what they're supposed to do as your public servants. Go ahead, check out those videos at the video archive, chop it up, send out snippets, share the entire presentations, the entire videos. They are well worth it, and TNM actually encourages you to do so. Finally, Raging Elephants Radio wants to ask you to download our app. You can find it Google Play Store and also at your App Store, totally, absolutely free. Your trusted news source, commentary dealing with Texas liberty, 24/7, 365. That's the way to beat the censorship of the big tech companies. No middle person, no silicon statist, RER directly to you, giving you the information that you need. Also sign up for our email list. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Apostle Claver T. Kamau Imani of RagingElePhantsRadio.com. I'm your Christian politician, the ultra-conservative soul brother. My enemies under the Pink Dome call me the purifier, and I like it. From Houston, may the Lord Jesus bless you. May the Lord Jesus bless the future independent, sovereign Republic of Texas.